Hi, you. How you doing? It's been so long since I've seen you. Thanks for coming to my cabin tonight. We're going to solve another murder mystery together. This is out of Color and Solve, Haunted Highrise, and this is our second murder mystery. If you remember our first one, if you haven't seen that one yet, it's in the playlist, Haunted Highrise playlist. And that one we solved the mystery that happened down in the restaurant on the first floor of this building. Now we are in a person's apartment. And let me read you what the murder mystery is here. A famous painter by the name of Rip Singleton was found dead on the floor of apartment 340B with an old cassette recorder near one hand and a gun in the other. When the police arrived at the scene, they pressed play on the recorder. It was Rip's voice. He said, "I have nothing else to live for. I can't go on," followed by the sound of a gunshot. After listening, the police knew that this was a murder and not a suicide. How? Well, so I'm going to put this into double speed because we're going to do some coloring. And I usually start with the ceiling or the upper part of the image and work my way down looking for clues. So together we can see if we can figure out why the police decided that this was a murder and not a suicide. So I'm starting here with the beams, and we're going to use alcohol markers because this book is single-sided. So alcohol markers are fast and easy. Just make sure you put a blotter page behind your page, and I definitely checked to make sure I had one. And I'm just going to do a series of browns. This is a reddish brown. This building seems very mid-century mod to me, so I tend to go with those sorts of colors: browns, yellows, greens, peaches, things like that. So I'm going to do the beams, different colors of brown. I'll probably put some darker brown in there to show some shading. Yep, and right there my Copic was leaking, and that's user error. I had just refilled that one and I filled it too far. I tend to do that. Filling Copics is really trial and error as to how many drops you need. It's usually between 20 and 40 drops, but sometimes I put more than that pen actually needs and it'll leak. So I keep an eye on it and I keep a towel nearby, and if it looks like it's starting to get too juicy, I'll blot it out before it leaks onto the paper. Until it gets down to the level it's supposed to be, then it stops leaking. I just need to learn to be more judicious in my refilling. So Rip Singleton lives in apartment 340B, and he's a painter. And looking at this, I imagine that he has painted these paintings on the walls too. Now, I do notice that the apartment's nice. It does look like he might be a successful painter, perhaps. But I also notice that the chandelier is crooked, which is odd. All of the lamps in the chandelier are kind of off. So I'm going to keep that in mind. And I am going to cut away and do more coloring and then come back just to save time here. This was really boring coloring here. This is just the walls and the ceiling that I did. I chose neutral browns and grays. And now we're going to go in on the pictures on the walls. And here I'm using a colored pencil. It looks like it could be Prisma. Who knows? We'll see soon. And I decided to do the paintings in colored pencil to make them look more like paintings, and also because these are tiny little elements. And as I'm coloring these pictures, I am looking to see if anything in them is a clue. So this book, the clues come in both the pages that you're coloring as well as the write-up about the page. So we'll read that over and over throughout this page coloring to see if we can figure out why the police think he was murdered and it wasn't suicide. So here I am making some pinks and greens. Those do look like Prismacolors, don't they? They might be, although I tend to use polys much more, so we'll see which one they are. So I'm making a nice little landscape here. I really don't see any clues here in the portraits either. I am starting to wonder here, though, if this woman who shows up in a few paintings isn't the woman who's standing there in the room. Does it say in the write up who she is? It says when the police arrived at the scene, oh, he was found dead on the floor with an old cassette recorder near one hand and a gun in the other. When the police arrived at the scene, they pressed play on the recorder. It was Rip's voice. He said, "I have nothing else to live for. I can't go on," followed by the sound of a gunshot. After listening, the police knew that this was a murder, not a suicide. So I guess I don't really know who this woman is yet. There might be some clues to figure out as we go who she is. Um, it is, as we're getting further down the page, it does kind of look like this nude that Rip was working on, this seated nude, might be her. Yeah, I think that might be the case. So maybe she was his girlfriend and a model, or maybe she was his muse, a model, and not a girlfriend at all. Not sure. Um, but I'm just filling in these paintings. Yeah, these are Prismacolors. I'm just filling in these paintings with some nice, fairly muted colors to go along with the wall and everything else. And I'm looking for clues and coloring. Okay, so now we're going to start on this crooked chandelier, and I'm still using Prismacolors. I love to make lights glow, and I usually do that by in the very center of the flame of the candelabra, of whatever it is, I make it the lightest color, and then I'll get darker and darker as I go out, trying to make it look like it's a yellow light inside of a either a clear or a white or an orangish or whatever color I want to make the shade. So here I'm going to darken up that middle bright yellow, and then the way you achieve glow is to make the bigger contrast between your light and your dark. So you want to go lighter than you think, like more brighter than you think, and darker than you think. If I stopped right here, it would look okay, but not near as impactful as if I keep going and eventually put some really dark stuff on the very outside. So I still don't know why this chandelier is crooked, and I'm still leaning towards maybe that's a clue. I don't know. But then I'm not sure how it could be a clue. It seems to be out of reach of everybody. Maybe it's just to show that he didn't really care about taking care of the house or anything. He was more concerned with his painting. I'm not sure. But I'm going to work on making the rest of. I'm not doing my most labor intensive techniques here to make gold. Um, you know, I this is not that sort of a coloring book. This is a fun book to color in order to solve a mystery. So I'm not using my best techniques here, but I am trying to get the idea across that it's a gold chandelier with yellow lights. But because I think that was part of the wall I just colored yellow. Because I'm not so certain that this is really a clue, I'm just going to kind of whip through these things, give it the illusion of being a light. Okay, I'm going to get started on this room or closet or something that has the bookshelf. I don't know if this bookshelf area has a clue in it. Um, it kind of struck me as odd that the books have their own room, but then I thought, duh, it's probably a library. This is obviously a pretty well off guy. He probably has a library in his apartment. So we'll just quickly color those because I just don't think they have anything to do with this murder. I mean, unless the person was going for a specific book or something. But so far, I'm not really seeing anything. So I think because the story doesn't mention books, it just mentions the gun and the cassette recorder. I think once we get down to where they are, maybe a clue will pop out at us, but so far nothing's popped out. I am very curious about that nude that he was either in the process of painting or was finished, but it's partially covered. The one that the woman seems to be standing and staring at. That's got to have something to do with it because I think that's her. It looks like her, has the same hair, same sort of build. If it was a murder, maybe she didn't like the painting or something. Maybe she murdered him. But it said when the police arrived at the scene, they pressed play on the recorder and heard Rip saying, "I have nothing else to live for. I can't go on," followed by the sound of a gunshot. And after listening, they knew it was a murder. It doesn't say anything about hearing a woman's voice. Hmm. Now, these books are really small, so I'm having to go in with some fine liners. And these fine liners I have, they might be the Stettler fine liners. I have a package of those. I'm not crazy about them. They really only work for the tiniest of things because they're pretty scratchy. Um, so I try to use them as often as I can in places like this because I've got them. Might as well use them until they're gone. I won't be repurchasing those. So I'm using muted colors again, dark greens, light greens, dark browns, just a mixture of colors to try and get the illusion of books back there. But again, I'm not seeing any clues for the mystery. Yeah, look at that one. That one's not barely even coloring. They're not my favorite pens. Okay, now I'm starting on the piece that really has interested me, and that's these easels that he has. I believe this one hanging on the wall that I'm doing right now, it looks like it's blank, but it might just be because easels are piled in front of it, because that would be weird to hang a blank painting on a wall. Um, or actually looking at them, they might be easels that are turned around. I don't know. But he's got quite a few of works in progress here. But the main one is the nude of this woman, which has got to have something to do with it because it's the main focus, right? And she's the only other person in the room. I'm surprised the story doesn't mention her. But there's got to be something about this. So I'm just using, back to my Copics, and I'm just using dark brown for the easel and a lot of the same. I'm using that same dark brown for everything that I think is an easel or a frame of some sort. I think that's what that is. And then for the canvases, I'll do different colors for them. mixing up the browns here because he seems to pre-frame his canvases. Looks like this brown needs a refill almost. Yeah, okay, I'm liking that. That looks good, but I don't see any clues, do you? Not yet? All right, so I went ahead and colored the rest of the background because I just wasn't finding any clues or anything um, we needed to focus on here. And here I get to start working on her, which if this is a murder, I mean, she's the only other person there, so she must be the murderer, or at least she found the murdered body. So I'm making her kind of muted colors too, mid-century mod colors. I really toyed with doing her top green, and I almost immediately wished I had, um, but I just kept going with more yellowy, warm browns. I'm definitely also going with the idea that she's the woman in the painted canvas there. And she doesn't look surprised. I know in the last page we did, there was a look on one of the persons, I think it was the bartender's face, that was helpful in solving the mystery, and one of you caught that. So now I look more carefully at the expressions that the artist gave to the characters and that they might carry more weight than I thought before. Because one of you figured out who actually committed the murder last time based on their expression. And she doesn't look scared or worried, or she almost looks like she's in contempt of him. And just making her more muted browns. Nothing flashy on her. I'm also curious about how on the tape it's his voice saying, I have nothing else to live for, I can't go on. It seems like he's in the process of doing quite a few projects. And with the paint spilling on the floor there that you can see next to her, he was painting. Usually someone who's feeling, I would imagine someone who's feeling like they can't go on, they have nothing to live for, they wouldn't continue doing a hobby or even his career choice. They would be doing nothing. They wouldn't be in the middle of a painting of her nude. Interesting. Oh, there's the tape recorder. We're seeing the tape recorder now. And there's a spilled jar of paint next to it. And then the gun in his hand, his other hand, with the blood on the floor. What do you make of that? The police arrived at the scene, pressed play on the recorder there on the floor, and heard Rip say, I have nothing else to live for, I can't go on, followed by the sound of a gunshot. I think it was about here as I was considering this while I was coloring, just being contemplative, thinking about what the police found, that I started coming up with an idea of why they might think it's a murder. It seemed kind of far-fetched, but I had an idea. Do you have an idea? You guys are so smart. So many of you are true crime aficionados that you would probably have figured it out by now. Why the police know that this is a murder. I don't think they know that she did it. I don't think we know that she did it, but we do know this wasn't a murder. I'm using those Languo gel pens right now. See how they go on really dark and juicy and then dry more light and matte? You have to take that into consideration when you're using them. So I find that I can't rely on the color in the barrel, that I really need to use my swatch chart when I want to pick the right colors for these because they do dry a completely different color. So I use my swatch chart. These aren't, unless you use the dopamine set or, some of the neons, they're not a really bright pen. They dry matte and muted, but that makes them really beautiful and fantastic. I just love them. Did I really go over all of those with this? I think I thought about it. I don't know if I did. I don't remember, but I must have, because here I go. See how juicy these things are? They put out so much gel ink. And you can do that trick of putting a kneaded eraser or some clay or something over the end of it. You can take off the end cap, but you don't have to. And just put it over the end and squeeze it against the pen, really make a nice seal so that no air is getting out through the little holes. Because it's got little air holes in it, even through the end cap. It just lets air in to work with the pressure inside the pen. And if you plug that up, the ink just really flows out. But I find the ink flows out enough for me without having to do that. Every now and then, especially for the lighter colors, I will, but it uses a lot more ink to do that. More ink comes out, so you use your pen up faster. And I found for these dark colors that, run really well, I don't need to do that trick. I'm glad I did that for this effect, though, because it looks better than just the black lines. Okay, we're going to finish this up and move on to the rest of her outfit, her belt. Eventually, I do her skin. But again, we're using those Languo gel pens for, when I'm picking out the colors here, I'm using the Mirandi Europe set. I have since put them all together into one organization case. But at this point, I was saving them all via sets because I was still in the process of showing them and explaining them on video. I'm going to use a Mirandi gel pen or a Languo gel pen for her purse to give it kind of that leathery look. Choose a darker color here. There we go. All right, here's our gentleman. I like this red, so I was going to make it for the blood, the old blood on the floor. Let's see, the tape recorder is near his hand, like the police said, and the police pressed play and heard all that. Heard him say couldn't take it anymore, and then there was a gunshot. There's paint bottles all over spilled. He does have his gun in his right hand. Looks like shot the right side of his head. What's up with this nude? I'm going to use alcohol markers to color this, and I'm just whipping it out because I really don't think this. I want to think this has something to do with it, but I can't, unless it's the motive, it doesn't seem to give any clues. So I'm giving her a mid-century mod chair. Yeah, here's where I'm like, look at the two of them. They're the same person. So I'm going to make their hair the same color. I wanted to give her a darker skin tone. I did pick a weird gray. I got to looking at it, I'm like, okay, now she looks like she might be a Martian. But maybe he painted her a funny skin tone, so I just went with it. I figured I could add some more colors. I wanted to see what it looked like when it dried. Now, I don't know what she's holding to cover up her bits, but this looks like another canvas. Yeah, I decided to do her that weird color too. Just picking out alcohol markers to use. Definitely going for the mid-century modern colors. That chair looks straight out of mid-century. I knew that these was pretty sure that these paintings back here didn't mean anything, didn't give us any more information, but knew they needed to be colored. So I'm sort of just throwing colors on here now. Now the spilled paint, I wasn't so sure, so I decided to go ahead and make it like it was the paint he was using. So there's the green that he would have used for the chair, and I'm using the Language gel pens for this because that is really tiny. When I pull the pen away and put it back on the paper, what I'm doing is I'm having problems with it running. Well, there I changed colors, but I will often take my finger and pull off any bits off the nib and maybe warm it up a bit with my fingers. These pens really do benefit from warming them, shaking a little, but also holding them in your hand, in your closed hand, warming them, because as the gel ink warms, it moves better. And I tell you, all these little itty bitty things to color was annoying me in the moment because I just wanted to get to what I thought was clues, and I was pretty sure it had to have something to do with tape recorder at this point. That's the only thing that's mentioned. Now, this book does say that there are red herrings planted, which means there are things to throw you off the path and kind of trick you that are planted in both the stories and the pictures. But there was so little in this story. Just a recording that the police pressed play and heard the recording that says, I have nothing to live for, I can't go on, and then boom. I'm running out of ideas for all these paintbrushes, so I just keep toggling between different browns in both the Copics and the Language gel pens. Sometimes just changing the medium, like this is the same brown that the table is, but the table's done in a Copic, and this is done in a Language gel pen, so um, they look different. This is more opaque and matte. And oh, so satisfying to color with. Do you guys have these? I highly recommend them. I use them on almost every page now. I would say every page, but there may be one really weird random page that doesn't have them, but literally they are one of my top mediums that I use. So starting on him, and what do you think? Have you seen anything that might be a clue? Finishing up on these pots of paint, and then we're going to go over to here to all these canvases, and I just decided At first, I thought they might have something to do with this because that's a lot of heavy scrolls of canvas. They could be used as a weapon. But they're over there behind the curtain, kind of, and nobody's paying attention to them. They're not mentioned anywhere, so I kind of let go of that idea pretty quickly and just started slapping some color down. Just finishing up this table with some more Languid gel pen. I hope you don't mind the silence. I find silence to be refreshing at times. It's soothing for the brain. And I know many of you use my videos to go to sleep by, so I'm going to keep any sort of music to a minimum, and just let you have my voice in silence to help you go to sleep. Okay. Well, we're getting close to the end. We're now on him. I want to give him some nice brown loafers. Uh, I decided to use the Languid gel pens, sort of to give it the shiny look, or not shiny because it does dry matte, to give it kind of a leathery look. And because these are tiny little places, give him the dark soles on his loafers. Okay, I'm going to work on those bits of paint there. So it looks like there's a spilled tube of paint, and I'm going to make it this red color. Although that might be the same color I used for the blood, so maybe not the best choice, but I was kind of running out of choices and really wanting to get back over to the other side of the page where I think there was more possibility of a clue. I think there's a couple of puddles here I'm coloring. Then I think that up there is the cap to the tube, above the tube, and below the tube is um, artist palette there that he dropped. I'm not sure how it ended up so far away from his hands, but I decided to, since there's probably more than just one color of paint on that palette, to put a different color around. And then I'm just adding some random colors that show up in that painting that he's working on, and coloring the palette itself. These are usually wood, right? I was having problems with that pen getting a little bit clogged, so I had to pull it to the side and rub my fingertips on its tip and get any extra paint off and warm it up a bit. Now this will dry matte and you'll be able to see those other paint blobs better. And at this point I'm looking at all these jars of paint and I'm like, oh my gosh, so much to color. All these little bits and details that at this point I'm not thinking. I'm pretty sure I've got an idea of how the police knew this was a murder, and it doesn't have anything to do with these pots of paint, I think. So I'm just wanting to get them colored for the sake of the page. And I'm trying really hard to not get my hand in anything that's wet. So it looks like I'm putting my hand right in it, but I'm not. I'm holding it above the page, not touching where I had just colored. Not the smartest thing to do. If you're right-handed, you really should work from the left side of the page towards the right, but I tend to work all over the page and not pay attention that I might have touched something wet until I get to that point, and now I'm holding my hand in an awkward position. Here I'm trying, this is from the Warm Yellow set, and I have really grown to like that set. And I still have these small canvases, as well as all the trinkets in the window. There's a lot going on in this page. Are you coloring along with me? Have you already colored this page? What did you do with those little bits? I'd love to see your page. If you're on Instagram, post it on Instagram with the hashtag Haunted Highrise, and that way I can find it. Because I'd love to see how you colored this page. Okay, I think we're done, as done as we need to be. What do you think happened here? Let's read this again. He's in apartment 340B with an old cassette recorder near one hand and a gun in the other. When the police arrived at the scene, they pressed play on the recorder. It was Rip's voice. He said, "I have nothing else to live for." Well, let's look at the answer in the back. And so the answer in the back says, "For the vengeful Muse," is what they call murder, not a suicide. If the dead man had killed himself, he wouldn't have been able to press the rewind button on the cassette recorder. Did you get that? It was his lover and muse, Loriana Cummings, who killed him in cold blood. When she discovered that Rip had made millions off of his nude paintings of her, she broke in, forced him to record the confession, then shot him and stole the last painting to settle the score. She might even haven't gotten away with it if she hadn't foolishly queued up the recording. So because the police could come in and push play, and it was at the beginning of the recording, and they could hear the entire confession, well, and then a gunshot, a dead man can't then stop the recording and rewind the recording back to the beginning. She made that mistake. So the clue was in the story all along, the fact that the police came in and pushed play and could get to and heard it from beginning to end. So they knew that, someone had shot him on the recording and then stopped the recording and rewound it. Wow. I kind of thought that. I kind of missed that when I first read when I first read about it, first read the story. I missed that part. That it was something tickled my brain about the recorder though. So I really paid attention when I was coloring the recorder, looking around the recorder, but there's nothing around the recorder in the painting, in the picture. So thank you for being with me tonight. Our next murder mystery will be the third in the book, Satan's Songbird. And this looks like a fun one to color too. And I look forward to coloring this with you and solving the mystery. I love you lots. Thanks for being here tonight, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.